What's going on, everybody? Brenden Schaeffer here with you, talking some St. Louis Cardinals baseball. It's Thursday afternoon, July 27th, 2023. Want to get into a little bit of the conversation surrounding Cardinals starter Jack Flaherty over the last 24 hours, but want to remind you guys real quick, if you enjoy the content on this channel, we put out daily St. Louis Cardinals conversation. Make sure you guys are clicking that subscribe button, clicking like on this video, and dropping your comment below with what you think the Cardinals should be doing heading into the trade deadline. And today we're going to focus specifically on Jack Flaherty after he pitched what may have been his final start for the Cardinals on Wednesday afternoon in Arizona. I think it probably was, right? We've got 5 or so days between now and the trade deadline. Jack Flaherty would not be scheduled to pitch again, and all indications are that Jack Flaherty will be on another team by this time next week. When you look at the standings, the Cardinals 11 games below 500. I believe they're 11 out in the NL Central. It's not feasible for the Cardinals to hold on to the minute hope that they could maybe pull off a miracle run and get back into the race when you consider all the teams they would have to leapfrog, whether that's in the division, whether that's in the wild card race. The Cardinals theoretically, sure, could win a lot of games between now and the end of the season, but they've put themselves into such a bind that the way John Mozeliak and his front office, I think, need to approach this deadline is to recognize that it's probably not their year. And that's been the way they've been approaching all of their conversations when it comes to trades ahead of this MLB deadline. And I think rightfully so. This has been the case for the last few weeks. It's getting to be time, though, to where we're kind of wondering, when are those deals going to begin for the Cardinals? And lots of reports are flying around in various directions about who might be traded. And we kind of know what the Cardinals would be seeking in any deal. It's going to be pitching and controllable pitching to try and improve things for 2024. But there was a nugget from John Denton of MLB.com that I know is catching some attention today on this Thursday morning. I believe he might have had that come out, where he talked about the potential of an 11th hour deal between the Cardinals and Jack Flaherty. A contract extension sounds eerily similar, right, to the reporting from Katie Woo from a couple of days ago about maybe the Cardinals and Jordan Hicks linking up on a contract extension. As of this recording, we have not seen that materialize yet between the Cardinals and Hicks. And I thought with that deal, it at least seemed somewhat plausible because of the way that Hicks has consistently said, well, he expects to be in St. Louis. He wants to be in St. Louis. And when you compare the two markets for the players come free agency, I feel like a starter like Jack Flaherty, even if he's only been kind of a mid-rotation talent this season, teams look at him and his history and maybe have some idea of the upside that he might possess for a team in a rotation, and you figure he might end up getting a pretty good multi-year contract out of it. It's not to say that Jordan Hicks couldn't do the same thing, but his earnings for his career so far, much lower because he's been a reliever. I think he's making like $1.8 million this year for the Cardinals, his final year before being eligible for free agency. So in the case of Hicks, it might be plausible that you could talk him into a multi-year contract that doesn't necessarily reflect the multi-millions he could make on the free agent market. Maybe I'm wrong in assuming that. I have said that if the Cardinals pull off something with Hicks, I think it's because we'll look at it as a team-friendly deal rather than the Cardinals paying him $10 to $12 million per season over a 2 or 3 year contract. I could see baking into that contract a couple years on the front end of maybe $4 million, $6 million, $7 million, to make it more palatable for the Cardinals to recognize the risk that they would be taking on in Jordan Hicks and immediately vaulting him into being one of the highest paid relievers in baseball, where we've really only seen that level of performance from him for a couple of months. Remember back in April, he was on the verge of potentially being designated for assignment by the Cardinals after a couple more rough outings. If those should have taken place, it may have been a completely different story with Hicks, but he righted the ship and has looked fantastic ever since. It's a question of, should the Cardinals be really looking to basically cash in with a contract extension when Hicks's value and his ability to command the most money is at its highest? You would think if the guy's got very high value, he would have trade value at this time as well, and the Cardinals could potentially move him, maximize his value in that regard. We'll see what ends up taking place with that. It was a couple of days ago, as of this recording, that Katie Woo first reported the notion of a deal between the Cardinals and Hicks perhaps coming to fruition. I think if the deal does not come to pass over the next couple of days, it is necessary to trade Jordan Hicks and maximize his value. He probably never will have higher value than he has right now. Different circumstance for Jack Flaherty. I understand that he's maybe not pitched at his career best levels this year, But if you look at the overall numbers, pretty sturdy and middle of the pack, kind of number 3 type starting ability from Jack Flaherty, if I would say. So I think there's value in that in the trade deadline, but there's also going to be the question of he knows that when he gets to the offseason, if he just waits a couple more months, he can look at 29 other teams and ask them, what are you willing to pay me to join your starting rotation and potentially unlock the type of performance that he had down the stretch in 2019, for instance, where he looked like a Cy Young candidate for a couple of months that season. I think there are other teams, the Dodgers are one that have always been speculated on when it comes to Jack Flaherty, that would certainly have interest in trying to maximize the most that he could bring to the table. So I feel like it would just not really make sense timing-wise for Jack Flaherty's side of things to talk extension with the Cardinals right now. It's not to say that I know where John Denton got his information. I just don't think it seems all that plausible that at the last minute, after not talking contract for months, we've seen Derek Gould report that extension talks in spring training never really got very far along, and that talks haven't really happened ever since then. So for the Cardinals to double back right now, from a timing perspective, it just wouldn't make sense to me with what this team clearly needs to be doing at the deadline, which is restocking for 2024, adding any controllable pitching that they can. Sure, you can pay Jack Flaherty a salary and have him be penciled in for your rotation for the coming years, but you got to get him to agree to that first. And like I said, it doesn't really make sense for Flaherty's perspective to do it now when he's oh so close to being able to see how the rest of the league would value him. It's not to say that he doesn't want to stay with the Cardinals. I think there is a part of him that would certainly like to do so. And he talked a lot last night out in Arizona to the reporters after that game about the fact that, you know, he has fond memories in St. Louis and laid it all on the line for this team. He said, every time I just tried to bust my butt and do what I could to help us win games. And he regrets that that hasn't resulted in a World Series championship while he's here. But he's also realistic about the business side of it. And I understand the report today from JD, but I don't think that it ends up materializing. I would be surprised if the Cardinals and Flaherty end up coming to an extension before the deadline. And again, it's really not what the Cardinals should be looking to do. Yes, you could sign Flaherty, but you could spend that same amount of money on another free agent pitcher in the offseason, and it's up to anybody's interpretation which pitcher, you know, the hypothetical one that you get this winter or Flaherty now would give you the better value over the next 4 or 5 years, whatever the length of that contract ends up being. We won't really know that. It's a hypothetical that you can't answer. But what we can answer pretty specifically is that Flaherty will have value to somebody at this deadline, and you can trade for a pitcher that you'll have beyond next year. I don't know who it's going to be. It might not be a guy with major league experience. It might not be a top prospect. It might be one of those in-between type of guys. Maybe somebody that's had a little bit of major league experience but hasn't pitched well at the big leagues, but has encouraging signs from his AAA numbers that would make you think, hey, maybe this guy could catch on at some point, like a 2024 or 2025. Keep in mind, those are the years that the Cardinals are specifically talking about wanting to compete and wanting to contend. And so everything they do at this deadline is going to be geared toward that end. We'll see what ends up happening with Flaherty, but my opinion, my guess, if I had to be put on the stage here to make a decision and call my shot, it's that Jack Flaherty will be traded over the next few days. I think the same will be said of Jordan Montgomery, and I'm getting to the point where if the Jordan Hicks thing does not materialize soon, I will have the same prediction for him. I just think it would be a mistake for the Cardinals if they can't get a deal done before the deadline with Hicks to then hold out and hope that they can come to an agreement later in August and September when they've completely lost the leverage to be able to get any value for him. Again, from a business standpoint, if you've got an asset that has never been valuated higher than it is right now, and there's a deadline to be able to take advantage of that, I just don't see why the Cardinals wouldn't go ahead and do it. And it's not illegal to re-sign that guy in the offseason. The same for Flaherty. Like, if they are traded, you can always approach them and say, hey, if you enjoyed your time here, we still appreciate you and want to make a run at you. If bridges are burned because we traded you and that makes you upset, then, you know, it is what it is. That's the risk we were taking in making the decision, I guess, the Cardinals would have to say. But there is just the business side of it that they are in a completely seller-dominated market where, I shouldn't say seller-dominated, the sellers have a chance to dominate because of how many buyers there are and how few short-term seller pitching options there are on the market. Like, you're seeing reports from Jeff Passan where executives are telling him, this is the best sellers market I've seen in my lifetime. If that's the case, the Cardinals and John Mozeliak should have no trouble cleaning up in this market with the short-term pitching options that they have, the rental pitchers that other teams should covet. And are they getting a bona fide star in return? Probably not. I think there's a world in which you trade Hicks and one of the starters like Monty or Flaherty in the same deal, or maybe you package a position player in a larger deal to be able to bring back more quality pitching prospects or pitching pieces. But I just think at this point, with where the Cardinals are in the standings, where they have admitted to be, it wouldn't make any sense to do anything but trade away these short-term pitching options for guys that you know will be around the next couple of years. Again, Cardinals fans say, I want an ace. This doesn't help you get to an ace if you're just adding some quadruple A type of pitchers or some guys who haven't ever pitched in the big leagues before. I understand that side of it, but to get to where this team needs to be, to put the pitching staff back into position to contend, you have to take your shot on some of these younger players that if one of those pitchers should pan out, talking about guys with high strikeout rates, maybe high walk rate too, something that you have to try and massage and get guys to find the zone more consistently to take full advantage of their talent. If the Cardinals can come up with those kinds of guys at this deadline, they're not guarantees to pan out, but you bring them to spring training in 2024, heck, you throw them into the rotation right now because you've got to fill Monty and Flaherty's spots if those guys are indeed dealt. So you put those guys out there and see what you have to where maybe by 2024 you have a really solid number 3 or number 4 starter, and then you can go to free agency and you have to identify and sign the right guys, but then you can pay more money, change the model. The model for the Cardinals has been really to be kind of pinching pennies when it comes to these free agent acquisitions. Think the Steven Matz type of deal. Maybe change the model to say, hey, we've got number 3s and number 4s and number 5s in our organization now after these trades. Let's sign a number 1 or a number 2 or a couple of them to maybe expedite this process and get the Cardinals back to their winning ways, that you have a lineup where there should be expectations to win. Goldschmidt and Arenado still, I'm going to say, in their prime years, even as Goldschmidt gets into his mid to late 30s, still performing. Arenado still performing, and he's only 32 years old, going on 33. I don't have concern about him over the next 2 to 3 years continuing to put up numbers and continuing to be good defensively. His renaissance after the All-Star break has been really impressive. So those guys are your anchors, and then you can put young guys like Donovan, Gorman, Jordan Walker, here comes Mason Wynn, Tommy Edman. What do you do with the outfield? Carlson, O'Neill. You do have Lars Nootbaar. But, that's a lot of dudes, and I didn't even mention the catcher position, which you have some questions about, whether Contreras will remain at that spot or whether you build around Ivan Herrera and maybe Contreras becomes that DH that they threatened to make him earlier in the year. We'll have a lot of things to say about that contract in the offseason and how the Cardinals want to proceed with the catcher position. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel to follow up on all of those things as we talk about them, because even in the offseason, we'll have daily Cardinals conversations. That is the purpose of this channel. And if you're a Cardinals fan, you have no reason not to hit that subscribe button for free. So appreciate you guys for being here and for watching the content. But that's stuff that we're excited to talk about in the offseason. But generally speaking, this lineup is going to be one of the top lineups, I believe, over the next 5 to 7 years in MLB, with the young talent you have emerging and the guys that you already have at the big league level producing the way that they are. There's an opportunity here for the Cardinals to do some special things, but they have to have the pitching completely overhauled if they're going to make it happen. I think there are ways to do that. I think you have to sign the right guys. But when you have someone that you can extract value from at the trade deadline, like a Jack Flaherty, and even if it's not a guaranteed bona fide stud that you're getting in return, it's giving you a chance. It's putting some of those kind of eggs into your basket and hoping that when you take them all out come next spring training, one of them's not broken, right? You just need 1 or 2 to supplement with Miles Mikolas. Steven Matz, potentially. That's another name that was mentioned by John Denton as a trade candidate, and Derek Gould has talked about that in recent weeks as well, that there's at least one, I believe it's an American League team, according to Derek's reporting, that sees Matz as a guy that could be viable depth for their rotation and maybe be a swingman out of the bullpen after the Cardinals have used him in multiple roles this season. If I'm the Cardinals, the only way you do that is if you're getting prospects back and the other team is paying the whole salary. I don't think the Cardinals should be desperate to unload Matz at this point after a little bit of a midseason renaissance from him. He is only owed like $11 million over the next 2 seasons, $11 million per year, I should clarify with that, which isn't great. But if he is that number 3 starter that he's kind of starting to look like, I mean, his ERA is down to like 4.3 or so for the season. It's Jack Flaherty range, honestly, which is amazing after where Matz had been. But things change based on a guy's performance. And if you're the Cardinals and he's your number 4 or number 5 next year, Steven Matz, at $11 million, you could do a lot worse than that. So the Cardinals should not be looking to shed this salary and be willing to eat some of the money just to get rid of Matz. Like, they don't have that luxury right now because they are very, very thin at starting pitching organizationally, especially after these trades of Montgomery and Flaherty. So Matz maybe is your number 4, your number 5. You take a shot on guys like the Liberators and the Zach Thompsons and the Michael McGreeveys and maybe the Graceffos, that one of those 4 or 5 guys could be a number 4 MLB starter by spring training 2024. That would be great. You add that to Michaelis and then maybe one of the guys you trade for over the next week, plus a big-time free agent signing like Aaron Nola. That's going to be a name that I think is on the market and should be consideration for the Cardinals when you talk about a power arm. Suddenly, the rotation doesn't look great, but it looks better, and you should be able to supplement with aggressive moves to target and identify relief pitching that can help you kind of lock down this bullpen compared to the league worst, basically, bullpen that it's been in terms of blown saves this season. A lot of moves for the Cardinals to make, but I just think one that would be a mistake to kind of wrap up the conversation on Flaherty here would be to extend him before you really even know what the market would demand of him, and thereby forego the value that he has on the trade market. If Jack Flaherty really wants to be here, which he's under no obligation to do, he's going to probably go to the highest bidder this offseason, and I'd do the same thing if it was my career. So I don't fault him for that, but I would say the Cardinals should take him and package him with whatever they can to get a candidate for the rotation in 2024, a guy that's under team control for several years, and if you hit on that lottery ticket, so to speak, you're in such a better situation financially, competitively, to be able to build a roster around some guys like the young pitcher that you could foreseeably acquire for Jack Flaherty or for Jordan Montgomery or Jordan Hicks. It's okay to package some of these guys, get guys that you believe can give you a shot next year, because John Mozeliak and his staff are going to have to turn things around quickly. And if they don't have some quality trades to be able to kind of jumpstart that process right now, it's going to be a lot more difficult. They're going to have a lot more moving parts to deal with come November, December, as you get into the offseason foray. It's important, I think, for the Cardinals to take advantage of this. So even though we're seeing the report that an 11th hour extension between the Cardinals and Flaherty is at least under consideration, I'm going to say I don't anticipate it happening, nor do I think from the Cardinals' perspective it makes sense to lock yourself into Flaherty when he's been inconsistent himself over the course of time. It's very intriguing to see what the free agent market might bring for a guy like Jack, and it could be pending his postseason performance if he goes to a contender over the next couple of days. But if I'm the Cardinals, you didn't work out the extension to this point. I think it could be time to just maybe look elsewhere and make sure you're getting value for a guy like Jack Flaherty at this deadline. But make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel if you like the Cardinals talk, and comment below with your thoughts on what the Cardinals should honestly do with Jack Flaherty. Do you hold out hope as a Cardinals fan that they do pull off some extensions between now and the trade deadline, which would maybe lead them to change their mindset about the way they approach the rest of this season and going into 2024? Let me know with your comment below. Make sure to like this video and join us next time on the channel. Be Safe Daily is my daily Cardinals podcast, and we post that audio to YouTube every morning. It's basically overnight that I end up getting it up. So if you haven't listened to that yet and you like long-form Cardinals content between like 40 hours, that would be something, 40 minutes and an hour, Be Safe Daily is definitely the place you should check out. I've got the logo sitting here up in the corner of the screen. If you go to Spotify or Apple Podcast, type it into your search bar, find that logo, and you'll be able to subscribe to the podcast, talking all things St. Louis Cardinals all year long right there. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll talk to you next time on the channel. Peace.